Chapter 22. When Ruby is buzzed up to Sue's apartment, Lenny is already seated in the kitchen chopping vegetables, sharp needle perilously close to her fingertips each time she brings down the blade. "Don't disappear on us again," Sue had gently scolded when she opened the door, but Lenny is less subtle when Ruby walks into the room. Where the fuck did you go, Ruby?" "I'm sorry," Ruby says, feeling her eyesight to water. "I had some things to figure out on my own." The two women had responded to her SOS text within minutes before she knew it. She was on her way to their Brooklyn apartment building for the first time with comfort and a home-cooked meal beckoning. "Something weird has happened. I need to talk to you both." That was the message Ruby had sent after going over Tom's comments again and again, feeling as if she might go crazy. In the small room, she had reached out with her heart in her throat. To find Sue and Lenny still open to her was a relief. Cool air rushing into a stifling room. Taking a seat next to Lenny now, Ruby watches as Sue suddenly adjusts Lenny's grip on the knife handle before returning to her own chopping and dicing. The casual intimacy of this gesture is maternal, beautiful, though neither of her friends seemed to give it a second thought. Ruby stares into the wine glass Sue had recently and waited for her when she walked into the room, thinking that perhaps the best friendships are like this, quiet and certain. She wonders at how long it's taken for her to contemplate this notion, that being seen and known is better for you than being someone else's enduring mystery. "I don't understand you sometimes." Ruby would need more fingers and toes to count the many times Ash has directed this sentiment at her. She opens her mouth and wonders where to start with her story about Tom, when Lenny turns to face her. "So, Josh, you've talked to him yet?" It is almost a relief to push Tom to the back of her mind, even for a minute, and focus on something she might actually have the words for. "There is something I never told you about why I came to New York," Ruby said nervously. As Sue stops her chopping and dicing, Lenny is already demonstrating, holding her breath. "I left because I was having an affair with a guy, Ash, who's getting married later this year. I've been the other woman for so long, and it's horrible to wait for a person to choose you. And when Josh said he was still married, I saw this starting over again." The rest comes out in a rush. The heartache, the embarrassment, and loneliness that follows her from Melbourne to New York. And before she can stop herself, Ruby's crying, causing Lenny to jump up from her chair, wrapped her in a fierce hug. "It all makes sense now," Lenny says, her own voice cracking. "I knew something was up with you. I just wish you told us sooner." "Agreed," Sue adds, massaging her fingers through her cropped hair. "I gesture." Ruby now recognizes attempt to gather her thoughts before speaking. "I'm very glad you told us, Ruby, and you'll get no judgment from me on how or who you choose to love. As for Josh," continues, "you should know it's not the same situation. He's been separated for a while now. I tell him all the time to hurry up with the divorce papers, but he's such a procrastinator when it comes to his personal life. We had hoped." Sue looks at Lenny, who nods emphatically, "that you might be a catalyst for him to finally get moving in a new direction. You're basically all he's talked about." Ruby blinks at this information, tries to absorb. There have been so many revelations coming at her these past 2 days. She can hardly keep up. It hasn't been that long since she found out my name, and now Alice Lee pops into her head with us startling clarity, and Ruby stops remembers why she came here tonight. She takes a long swig of wine, shakes Josh off for the time being. "Thank you for that, I think. But there was something else I wanted to talk to you both about. Actually, something happened yesterday." Taking it slow, Ruby tells Lenny and Sue about meeting Tom, about how he showed up at the exact place she found my body, and how charming he was at first before he kept trying to turn the conversation back to the murder, even when she made it clear she didn't want to talk about it. As Ruby goes over their encounters, she thinks of Detective O'Brien and the last time she had tried to explain what happened down by the river, how he said it can take time to remember details better, especially the important ones. She's conscious of getting the details she does remember about Tom in the right order, wants to give her friends the clearest account she can. Still, she pauses over Tom's comments about pictures, struggles to describe that particular detail, and all that comes after it. The "I want a kiss" and Josh's message, meeting Noah, the gift of his stories about Alice. She knows that each bit of the story is bursting with significance, but what if she's reading the signs all wrong? When What's the last time she knew something to be completely true? Ruby suddenly sees Josh holding out his phone with like a bunch of flowers. My smiling face filling the screen. Taking a deep breath, she carries on, finally able to admit just how uncomfortable Tom made her feel, the way he kept pushing himself on her and onto me too. There's something this guy seems to know that he should, she adds, arrives now at the place she started, coming up the stairs to Sue's apartment tonight. Her confusion held her in front of her, and her fear too that her friends might shut the door in her face. She feels exhausted to have come this far, and from the look on Lenny and Sue's face as she finished the story, they're right there with her. Oh my God, Ruby, do you really think? But for once, Lenny is lost for words, and she trails off, looking to Sue for help. The older woman is silent, thoughtful, as she refills each of their wine glass almost to the rim. If Ruby didn't know better, she swears Sue's hands are shaking. That man, whoever he was, had no right to make you feel that way, Ruby. Sue's indeed trembling, though not from fear, from rage. And Alice, the poor girl, she was basically the same age as my Lisa. What happened to her made me so mad. The entitlement of these fucking men who destroy lives just because they can. I never ever hear you swear. Then he starts and stops. You're right, it makes me fucking mad too, and scared. Wine slops over Lenny's glasses as she watches it spill into the table before she turns back to Ruby, her dark eyes wide. Do you really think he could have done it, this Tom guy? Still, Ruby doesn't know for sure. How could he? How could she? Reading true crime threads and wandering around the internet with her imaginary magnifying glass could never prepare her for this, not even seeing the butchering of a murder investigation up close. These forensic investigators, Jenny, who comes in interview with O'Brien, could give her the tool she needs to determine Tom's motives down at the river yesterday or any of the days before. How do you crawl into the mind of a murderer, and would it look like any different from that of any other man when you get down to it? For all I know, Ruby answers, so Tommy's a great guy, just a little forward and a bit weird about Alice. That's not enough to make him a murderer. No, it isn't, Sue responds. And so what I'd like to ask you is this, something we don't ask ourselves enough. Do you trust your instinct, Ruby? The question feels as large as the room, and all three women pause to consider it, thinking about the nights they've crossed the road to avoid a parked car with its lights still on, or pretended to make a phone call when someone walks too close behind them, remembering the times they had shifted seats on public transport or said no thank you to the offer of a drink. Self-preservation as a replacement for instinct, because being right will be the real danger here. Ruby feels her body arch towards this sudden realization, a shudder that almost lifts her from the floor. I'm afraid to be right, she says, holding out her arms to examine the tiny hair standing up from her skin, because can you imagine what that would mean? Something Josh had said to her that night at the secret bar comes back to her now, when they finally knew my name. They're not always monsters, Ruby. Sometimes they're normal guys who turn out to be capable of terrible things. It is true, so small. She almost missed it, so did I. But there it is, half hidden by the rocks in the dirt, just waiting to be found. You mustn't blame me for what happens next, though I suppose some of you saw it coming, and maybe it is my fault the way it all plays out, but I would never purposely put Ruby in danger. Please know that. I would have shown her this last important detail in a different way if I could. She can't sleep. Lenny and Sue thought she should go to the police straight away. In the morning, maybe, she said before she went home, thinking, hoping the midnight hours might help her find the words she would need to make that call, knowing Detective O'Brien would need something more concrete than her instinct, her discomfort, but the words don't come. Instead, her head is filled with half-finished conversations, weeks, months, years of them, and Tom's voice is the loudest now. Everything is wrong with the interactions. This seems obvious now. Why did he? And why would he? And what was he? Ruby kicks off the bed covers in frustration. What is it that she's missing here? Tom knows something about Alice. That's what she returns to time and again. The impossibility of it, and yet she was out here taking her pictures. It doesn't make sense that he knows this. She's the one who found the body. She's the one who has spent night after night following breadcrumbs all over the city, piecing it all together. How can Tom be in possession of such an important detail that she herself did not know? Fuck it. This feels like the other morning. The room too small, her thoughts too big. To Ruby, it almost feels like a dream as she gets up in the dark, puts on her running shoes, When she exits her apartment, makes her way towards Riverside Park. The streets are just as empty as the morning. It's not raining today. This is something different. But the stillness, the silence, her frustration feels exactly the same. Checking her watch, Ruby calculates the sun will be up in half an hour. The sky is already changing colour, lifting up off her nose, and this emboldens her, lengthens her strides as she enters the park. I can feel the adrenaline coursing through her now, the way it propels her towards the river. And I want to just stop, find a way to turn her around. I won't open up the sky, pour torrents of rain if I could, crack the earth open, brings down the trees. But she keeps running. She can't see me or hear me, and she cannot see what is waiting for her down on those rocks. I speed between the river and the track. She makes through the park, desperate to keep her way. There are other runners, cyclists dotted around the park in this early morning, and I try to rearrange them, move them into her path, but nothing works. Gusts of winds, branches bending. My panic is the slightest touch, and Ruby is moving too fast to feel it. And then mercifully she stops. The sky is still dark, the river darker, and she stands suspended high above the place where it happens, knowing there are steps just ahead of her that will take her down to the water. She wonders, is this what Alice felt, heading down to the river that morning, an inexplicable pull towards the water, a willful ignorance of how her own safety, because she has something she wanted and needed to do. What on earth were you doing in the park that morning? Ruby takes the steps carefully, quietly. When she reaches the middle level of the park, she finally sees what I have been trying to split to keep from her. Tom Martin, below her, standing on the rocks, shifting something from hand to hand, trembling in hand. He has come here every morning this week, always before the sun comes up, planting his feet on either side of where he found me, closing his eyes. I've come here every morning to observe him. His growing desire for Ruby, the mud brown of it, and wanting to scream. I whispered the words in his ear. That very first meeting, willed him to speak them out loud. A girl was murdered here. I set the gull squawking, soured the wine, put my hands over his lips where he kissed her. So she felt the brittle of my bones instead of his warm flesh, but it wasn't enough to stop this. It wasn't enough to keep her away from him. And now I can feel Ruby shaking instinctively. She has backed up the stairs, creating enough distance to allow her to run if Tom suddenly turns away from the river, sees her standing there watching him. He would have to scramble up over the rocks, climb over the middle rail. There might be enough time for her to escape if he sees her. Ruby makes this calculation a split second, but her safety is far from assured. She knows this. Flight, fight, flight, freeze. What do we choose in these moments? Ruby is both rooted to the spot and ready to run, and something else too, the thing that scares me most. A white-hot rage is boiling within her, flames replacing blood. She imagines barreling down the stairs, engulfing this man. How dare you? She wants to scream. How dare you? This is no question now. She knows. The man who kissed her 2 days ago is the man who raped and murdered Alice Lee. What was the last thing she said to him? Thank you, Tom. I appreciate your concern. What neither of us said was none of us say. You took up all the space. I didn't know how to say no, and you never waited for my yes. I need you to leave me alone now. We swallow the words and the warning bells so that we take on the doubt, dismiss what we know to be true. We demur, placate, say just enough and smile just enough and let them touch us just enough, hoping the moments will pass. When he climbed down into the rocks, when he came up beside me in the splatter rain, I said, nice spot, isn't it? I wasn't so much afraid as alert, attuned to his interest in me, and aware immediately that I would now be responsible for managing that interest, knowing I would have to be careful with how I respond to his advances, that my reaction would determine whether he made to lodge himself next to me or encourage him to turn and leave me alone. The only thing I wanted him to do. Here's what I was thinking just before he materialized out of the blaze of the rain. I was thinking about how freedom and safety are the same thing, really. It was just after 5:30 in the morning, and the air was vibrating, whistling around me, and I had removed my parka, was using some kind of umbrella for the leisure, and my arms were bare, exposed. The smack of raindrops and the icy air on my skin was exhilarating. I was wide awake, watching the buildings on the other side of the Hudson wake up to light after light coming on, flashes against the dark sky, thinking about freedom and safety, how unfettered I had become. The thread pulling back to Mr. Jackson falling loose, if not quite severed entirely. When my ex-lover had answered the phone earlier that morning, clearly foggy from sleep, I remained silent at first, listening to him say hello over and over until finally I heard him exhale under against my name. Alice? He sounded weary. Is that you? I'm sorry for taking your mum's camera, I said in response, and I heard another sigh before Mr. Jackson asked me where I was calling from. Glancing around my bedroom in Noah's apartment, I observed my new life, brochures for the photography school on the dresser, and a blank set of post-it notes waiting for my pen. A book on common dog behaviours. Purple runners at the base of my bed, toes pointed towards the door outside. I heard a train rumble of thunder as through a peak of curtain I could see the hazy oranges and blue of the stormy pre-dawn sky. Home, I answered, knowing this to be as true as anything I have ever heard. I waited seconds, minutes for Mr. Jackson to ask me if I was okay. I waited for him to press into my absence this past month, probe it, but instead he stayed silent. And I knew right there and then that he did not want to know where I was. I have to go, I said finally. I just wanted you to know I'm alive. His continued silence was a wave of truth waiting to break all over me. I hung up the call. It was a stifling silence that pushed me out the door into the early morning storm. I needed space, I needed to stretch out, and finally seeing how small he had tried to make me all that time with Mr. Jackson. I was only ever someone to control. He never gave me room to make mistakes, to discover who I was for myself. He needed me to behave in a way that suited him, and even more in a way that preserved his idea of me for a while. That had been enough love for me, not now. Freedom then would be escaping this containment once and for all. And that's when my heart slowed and the world expanded, stepping into the park, unafraid, propelled towards the water. My new giddy freedom, a hand at my back, passing the wood chip dog runs where I would bring the puppies on the next fine day, and the empty sport fields turned to mud that would teem with people in the summer, turning my face to the rain, then away from it just as quickly as water stung my cheeks, feeling the crisp separation in the air, before lightning once again sagged across the sky and thunder echoed in its wake. Knowing I was as right as this storm, as full of potential to capture this would be to give the photography school my self-portrait, show them the artist I intended to be. And then the stranger was climbing down over the rocks, coming towards me, staring at my bare arms, pointing his extinguished cigarette at me. Asked if I had a light. It must have been the way I shook my head slightly, or how I turned my attention back to Alicia. My last clear thought staring through that small viewfinder was how much lightning bolts reminded me of my blood vessels, veins branching out across the sky. And then it was him, not the lightning, that split me in two, though she never trusted these memories after. When she looks down at him, now Ruby sees everything Tom Martin did to me that morning, catches the blind red of it flashing across his body. I'm not even sure how it happens, the way she can suddenly view the world from my perspective. There I am, climbing down into the rocks here close to the water. Like in the way it reflects the lightning mirrors the sky, there I am, peering through my viewfinder, framing the world, thinking it is mine for the taking, and then I am startled when I sense someone is behind me on the pathway, his eyes a gleam in the dark. Ruby can see every grotesque electric pulse of him as he approaches me, and more than that, to my absolute horror, she can suddenly feel everything I felt that morning, as if what happened to me is happening to her too. Hello there, he says, and I think at first that I'm going to be okay. He looks normal, this man, in his knee shirt and regular shoes, and insomnia like me, I presume, or a storm chaser, someone more comfortable than out in the rain, than tucked up in bed. No need to be so scared, I tell myself, but I am all the same. When he climbs over the railing too, takes his time to come up beside me. Got a light, he asks, holding out his half-smoked cigarette, and this time I catch it, the way his voice is far from measured, careful, as if he barely restraining himself. No, I say, screwing my shoulders, hoping this makes me look stronger than I am. Never let them see that you're afraid. I read that once, and I do my best to fool him, standing there with my camera between us. I've had near misses before, felt danger as a pulse in my throat, and for a while there, as he tries to make conversation about whether my camera, what it is I'm doing out here all alone. I think this is going to be one of those times. I keep my answers short, polite, buying myself minutes until the sun comes up, but then he tells me I'm beautiful, says, do you like to fuck? And I know deep in bones that this is not going to be a near miss. When he commands me to smile, when he comes at me with all this smug determination, I acquiesce, thinking one last time that I know what to do here, that I can survive this if I just play it his way. Like I said, it surprised me at the end, the way I had no chance, how swiftly it happens when Tom Martin entered my life. Ruby sees, feels everything that happens to me, and then she turns and runs, nausea rising in her, replacing her fear, so that when she reaches the safety upper level of the park, she doubles over and heaves, vomiting up everything she has witnessed. There was just enough time before she fled for her to hear the splash, an unmistakable sound of something being thrown into the river. It is a detail she'll remember better this time. I think she's hurt. I don't know if I should go to her. Should I go to her, tell me what I need to do? For weeks Ruby has worried that she has let me down, though she never said it to herself out loud. She wondered if she could have done anything different that morning, if she hadn't got lost or slipped in the rail, or if she paid more attention to her surroundings in those minutes before, when she was worried about the rain. Was there some moment she missed, some way she could have changed things? All this time Ruby had been searching for absolution, for a way to say sorry, for arriving too late, for not being able to get to the girl or to whoever came before her in time. Her obsession with the murder with me was her apology. Truly, you did everything right, Ruby. That's what Officer Jennings said after she found me today, when she picks up her phone with shaking hands and dials the number on the card Detective O'Brien gave her that terrible morning. Weeks and a lifetime ago, Ruby finally believes that Noel was right. New York really is made for second chances. Thanks for listening.